lovely Misfitians, and welcome to another vlog. So today's actually going to be a really busy day. I have a lot actually that I need to do. First off, what you'll be seeing in this vlog is I'm going to be filling up a new palette. I got a new porcelain palette and I'm super excited. I'm looking at it right now and I'm super excited I get to fill that with paints today. I've been holding off filling it with paints because I've been experimenting with some new paint colors, and my palette from last year, the colors that I had last year, have slightly changed. So because I've been adding these newer colors in, and I have to say I really like them. So today you're gonna see me filling a new porcelain palette, which I got actually from one of y'all, and I am super excited to fill it up. I also have to do a lot of photography stuff for a website that I am working on. I'm super excited about opening that up and sharing that with all of you in the near future. Some of you already know what I'm talking about, but I am working on a new website that is just gonna be really cool and really fun. We've been working on the kinks for a while now with it, and slowly things are coming together with that. So I have to take some pictures, just photography pictures for that today as well. If you are interested in what I'm talking about, please make sure to sign up for my newsletter. If you're on the newsletter, you'll probably be the first you'll be the first to know exactly what that website looks like and what's going on with it and stuff like that. So I'll also provide a link down below for that. Okay, that's enough of the news stuff. Let's go ahead and get into this vlog. I am super excited and fill up this paint palette. So while I'm doing a time lapse of me filling this porcelain palette, I thought I would answer some of your questions basically relating to this particular palette, because I posted on Instagram, do you all have any questions for me? And y'all gave me a ton of questions. So we're gonna be going through all of those, as well as a couple of other things that I'll be just showing my insights and what I think about this palette. So first off, the question that I probably got asked the most is what brand of palette this is. And this is a Jackson's Art porcelain palette. They have actually two. They have a 19 well and a 32 well, and the 32 well is the one that I have. First off, I have to say, I really like this palette. I actually have another porcelain palette that I bought a couple of years ago, and that particular palette was about $100. These are so much cheaper and they work, in my opinion, better than the one that I bought for $100. And that particular one that I bought for $100, it's just so heavy and so clunky that it was hard, and it's huge too. It was hard to use on my art table. Unless you have a large art space, it's hard to actually use that particular one. So I felt like this particular palette that I have right now, it's a good size, it's a decent larger size, but at the same time, it's not taking up my whole table space. Another thing that y'all asked, several of you actually asked, is does this have a lid? And I'm gonna say yes, it does have a lid. It has a plastic lid that can go on top of it, which is great because one of the things that I didn't like actually about my other palette is it had absolutely no lid to it whatsoever. This one does have a lid. The thing that I will say I don't necessarily like about this palette, just to keep it totally real, is I feel like the lid is kind of flimsy. It's just a plastic lid, and since it's only in an art studio space and it's not really moving, like this is not a palette that you travel with, there's no portability to this palette whatsoever. the lid is only gonna stay in place, but I do feel like it could have been a little bit sturdier of a plastic as a lid, and I even would have liked if it maybe had something that could just help seal it better onto the palette. This lid just kind of sits on top. But that being said, I am definitely not, that's not a deal breaker for me. That's just me being really nitpicky, to be perfectly honest, with the lid of the watercolor palette. But I would say that is one downside to this watercolor palette, but everything else I would say is very positive. I really, really like this watercolor palette a lot. And I've worked with other porcelain watercolor palettes, whether in classes or even the one that I mentioned previously. And I just really like also how easy it is to fill the wells. I feel like they're not super deep. So they're deep enough that you can fill them and wet them and basically get a nice kind of pooling inside of that well, but it's not so deep that you're actually using almost your entire tube of paint. Because I'm the type person, I like to sometimes use my paints, my watercolor colors, dry kind of in my palette, kind of like pans, but then I also like the option of using my paints fresh from the tube. So if I want to use my paints fresh from the tube, I can just simply put them on top inside of the well, but since these wells aren't super deep, I'm not using a ton of paint to fill them. So anyway, that's another positive that I would say from this particular palette. I also have to say that the mixing surface on this palette is really, really nice. I actually, before filling the wells, I played around with it a little bit, just playing around with the mixing surface and seeing how it mixed the paints on top in that mixing area, and it's so much better than my little porcelain plates. It just pools really nicely your paint colors, so I have to say I really like that as well. So I think that's really most of the questions that I got just concerning the palette itself. The next questions that I'm going to be tackling are those of the paints that I'm actually filling the palette with. So one person asked, are you basically mixing brands, or are you kind of sticking to one brand now, and basically that type of stuff. I have to say, for me personally, I am the type person of the type belief system that there is not one particular watercolor brand that is superior to another. It really depends on your personal preference of how the brand basically mixes that particular pigment and that particular color. And you just choose basically what you like. So to answer the question in a short form, I have multiple different brands inside of this palette. I have Daniel Smith, I have Winsor & Newton. I would say most of my paints are Winsor & Newton. I've found over the years that Winsor & Newton paints, to me, they seem less granulating and smoother. Whereas if you really like that granulation and you really like more of that texture, Daniel Smith, in my opinion, is fantastic for that. That being said, I feel like Daniel Smith does a better job of their greens than Winsor & Newton. So you'll notice my greens are from Daniel Smith. Another thing that you'll notice is I have several Holbein paints. Holbein paints tend to be more opaque watercolors or more chalky colors compared to Winsor and also Daniel Smith. But that being said, I feel like personally Holbein's more pastel-y colors, such as the two colors that you'll notice that a lot of people ask me about, is Shell Pink and I believe it's Juan Brilliant No. 2. Those two colors, I feel like Holbein does a fantastic job with those two, and I absolutely love just using those colors. I would say those two colors are my primary base colors for skin tones. So several times over multiple years. People have asked me how I mix my skin tones for my people. I will always use these two colors and then I will mix them with browns basically, or some yellow ochre or those types of things, more neutral colors, to basically create my skin tones. So these two colors I would say are my base tones, and then I'm constantly like tinting them back and forth for lighter skin tones or darker skin tones, basically depending on what I'm actually going for. So these two colors are great for that. If you do not want to buy Wand Brilliant number 2, you can actually mix Shell Pink with Cadmium Yellow Lemon from Schminky, or Winsor Yellow. They'll be slightly different, but you can actually mix those two together, either a yellow and a pink, or a lemon yellow and a pink, and you'll get very, very close, if not exactly, to that Wand Brilliant number 2. So Shell Pink is definitely a staple for me in my palette, as well as my yellows, but I don't necessarily need Wand Brilliant number 2 because I can actually mix that. So anyway, that's a little color mixing information for you. I am working, sign up on the newsletter, because I am working on a color mixing course. It will probably be out in the spring. I'm working right now on more basic courses to kind of build up towards that particular course. I love doing color mixing. For any of y'all who have followed me over the years, you know I color mix a lot. I swatch colors a lot. I love doing it. It's just so much fun to me. So I'm making a full-blown course on that, but I wanted to first kind of lay the foundation of some other important information you need to know. So those are actually 2 courses that I'm working on right now that are going to hopefully come out by December area. And then in the spring, I'm gonna have my color mixing course come out. So anyway, something to look forward to. But make sure to sign up for my newsletter, because that will actually keep you in the loop. And Pepper has decided to join us. Hello, my child. Anyway, let's go ahead and talk about, before we leave for today, let's talk about the Misfit of the Week. So I'll go ahead and lean over here. Misfits of the Week are these right here. And they have completed the Watercolor Misfit Challenge of the month, where basically they are doing leaves. There's a couple more weeks in October where I will be pulling stuff from Instagram and Facebook and other places, as long as you tag me and you use the hashtag Watercolor Misfit Challenge so that I can see it. I will showcase some of y'all in the vlogs at the end. And I am coming up with a new basically idea for November, November's challenge. So I'll tell you what, like this video, that always really helps. And then leave me some suggestions of what y'all would like for the challenge to be for November, because I have some ideas. I was thinking about maybe moons or stars or stuff like that. Like a harvest moon I think would be really pretty. But you know what? Y'all are basically involved in this challenge, so leave me some suggestions below of what y'all would like to basically have for the Watercolor of the Month challenge. I will also partake in that challenge, so you'll get to see me paint that and kind of share my thoughts on that subject, whatever y'all kind of choose and decide. I will probably have a voting based on the comments down below for this week's video. Next week I'll probably have a voting poll type thing for whichever one you think is the coolest. So anyway, Lots of love, y'all. I hope you enjoyed this particular video, and I will most likely share more of the dogs next week. So they have kind of been under the weather this week, unfortunately. Hopefully there'll be more of them next week. Oh, and also if you purchase this palette through the link below or the link on my blog, I will receive a small commission to help support this channel. So by getting a nice fancy little palette for yourself, you're also helping support this channel so that I can put out more content for y'all. So thanks in advance. If you do purchase this palette, I will absolutely guarantee you will love it. And like I said earlier, this is one of the cheapest porcelain palettes that I've found on the market, and it's actually really a good deal as well as a good product. So lots of love, y'all, and I will see you soon, and bye.